we have an organic ambassador in Liberia. Her name is Victoria Young. She used the app to save a whole community.
A whole slum community.
A whole slum community. And as she was using the app, she was like, I don't even know if this is going to work, but I remember. So she raised it. And she said 5 minutes later, fire service was there. Glad to be here, Nathan.
Yes.
Thank you. First question. Why do you do what you do?
It's an interesting question, but it's just based off personal experiences and then living within a country or on a continent where we see most people are kind of like hopeless, I would say, because when they're in emergency, there's nowhere else to turn. So that drives us. And the story of My Watchman started from a very personal experience. Myself, I had an experience with my wife. She was girlfriend then. She had a security emergency. Call me. I called all the numbers I knew. And the truth is, I know a lot of people in the country, so still couldn't get any help. So I drove there, got there, but thankfully nothing tragic happened. So that was a what if moment for me. And I think about a lot of people who don't have the connections that I have, I was the kind of, and what their lives have been. And for me to growing up, because I grew up in a slum community, born there, I know for a fact that whenever we had like emergency, whether it was fire, security, or medical, there was always a community approach. So when there was fire, the entire community would come around, grab sand and try to put it off. If there was medical emergency, the strongest person within the community would probably grab a wheelbarrow, get the sick person, and try to get to the nearest point where we could get taxi to go to the hospital. So the situation with my girlfriend was a what if moment for me. It was deja vu about when I was growing up, being in this situation when I was completely helpless. That's what drives us.
Yeah. And to add to what Oliver stated, when you just think about his lived experiences, that's the story of many of our beneficiaries and our customers today. Um, and our entire goal, is to actually democratize emergency response. Okay, an emergency response does not equal health health only, right? It's a whole ecosystem. So emergency response is health and medical. Emergency response is security, right, and well-being. Emergency response is sensitive things like gender-based violence, right? The idea of My Watchman is that we want to provide like that holistic peace of mind, right? And that's something we've seen actors across our space, like focus on security and health, understandably, because those are the ones that are prominent. Um, but when we look at the context and really think about, not what's the easiest to get into, but what is necessary and needed, that's when you think about things like a sensitive thing like gender-based violence, right? Nobody does emergency response for gender-based violence because it's a very sensitive topic, but it's one that we're actually going to boldly move forward. So that's it in a nutshell.
And before I get into your service offerings, some of the questions around your business, how do you guys know each other?
Okay.
It goes way back.
It goes way back.
From grade school, pretty much. Grade school, we fifth grade?
Yeah, fifth grade. So
fifth, sixth, yeah, grade
so
school.
that's form 5 for the
British,
British system.
Yeah.
But yeah, from fifth grade we've known each other.
High school.
High school. Our parents knew each other as well.
Refugees together.
Refugees. We escaped the Liberian civil conflict. We're all refugees in Ghana together.
In Ghana too, so yeah.
So there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
Give me a quick summary of that experience. What is it like for you guys?
Well, here's what I would say. There's two ways you can actually understand adversity and live it, right?
Mm-hmm.
One is it can take on the form of PTSD and you can just want to push it away, or you can embrace it and say, okay, how can I make this different? And I think that's what we're doing here. Yeah. The fact that we never had silver spoon.
Yeah.
The fact that we went through this traumatic experience.
Yeah.
But this is where we end up as West Africa Founders of the Year, right, out of 8,300 other startups. That just tells the story of like African resilience, but more so Liberian resilience.
Could you walk me through how you actually started your business?
Yeah. So, like I said earlier, when I had that experience, I had a what if moment. And then it was also deja vu thinking about my childhood where when we had emergency, there was no response. So I talked to my team, developers. I have this idea. What do you guys think? And then
I'm
around
going to
that,
stop him for a second because he's being humble. So Oliver actually, we both lived in the U.S. before.
yeah,
He moved back home like 10 plus years ago, and he started up like a IT firm, Rovia Technologies.
yeah,
So he already had like existing successful business running.
yeah,
So I just want to kind of give that context because he said he talked to his team.
yeah.
So he already had like a thriving business, and
Yeah.
that's why he got the CEO of the year with the
African
African
leadership.
Leadership Magazine.
Yeah.
So he already had that. So again, that leans into the whole idea of, we didn't have to do this, but the need is so compelling.
Yeah.
So continue.
Yeah. So after I explained to my team, the original idea was around security because that was what my experience was regarding this solution. But then as we tested, we realized the same request to response that is required for security emergency can be used for medical emergency. Even though within those different processes, you have to maybe iterate to fit each one. So for example, I'll give you an example. For if you're in a security emergency and you use the My Watchman app, we after you click the emergency on the app, within 90 seconds, the command center calls you. One, to verify it's an actual emergency. Two, to verify the emergency type you selected is the one you're in because you have multiple. I could be a sighted and hit fire even though I'm in security emergency. And then three, just to confirm your location because we don't ask. The app grabs your location when you actually click it for emergency. Once we confirm that, we electronically assign it to the nearest responder. Our responders are in networks in different communities. So we assign it to the nearest responder and then they click on their phone, they click navigate, and it takes them directly to you step-by-step direction. You see who's coming, where they're coming from, and their ETA. They see your information as well. And then the command center also monitors all that in real time. So that's security. But with our medical emergency scenario, when you're in a medical emergency, once we confirm that, we triage that with our partners. We have on-call doctors and nurses who then take over the call to make sure to perform some basic telemedicine with you. But then also within the app, we've seen where in most African countries and developing countries, not a lot of people have basic medical records. So within the app, people have the ability to add information about themselves. So if I'm allergic to any medication, you can add that. If I have pre-existing conditions, I can add that information within the app. If I'm on current medications, I can add that. We have instances where people go to the hospital and they ask them what medications you're on, and they can say, they say, oh, it's some red pill or some blue pill.
Right.
So we give people the ability to add that, even to add the blood type. A lot of people don't even know the blood type. So we'll partner with the National Blood Bank, and we have this, what we call on Know Your Status Drive. It's coming up in December again this year, where subscribers of our app goes to the National Blood Bank. We have different triage around the countries, and you can go and test, and then you get your blood type, and you upload that within the app. So that information gives us a richer experience when you're in a medical emergency. One, we already know if you're on existing medications. Now the doctors can say maybe it's medication interacting, or maybe you're allergic to something because they have that information. So with again, request to response, the process is the same, but within that request to response, there are different iterations with different medical different protocols with different emergency types. Yeah.
And in terms of your ideal client and customer, who would that be, and how did you go about starting off by targeting a group and then growing it?
I would say for Notion, everybody, you can take it from there.
Yeah, but and actually that's our differentiator.
Yeah.
Like our positioning is we want to democratize it. We want to give access to everyone. Okay, how does that work? Because we're a for-profit business. So what that means is like we actually have to create an avenue, right, so that the petty traders, right, will be able to have access to that. So we actually partner with like in-country like nonprofits. We've partnered with like International Rescue Committee. We've partnered with CEDA, right? And the reason for that, listen, is that without bringing them into the ecosystem, like they're not going to benefit, right? Without bringing them into the ecosystem, they're not going to be able to like have the last mile care that they need. So that's how we do it. So it's everyone, and I'll tell you, kind of like when we say it, people are like, well, how do you make money? Well, there's two sides to that. We look at our customer segmentation, two big buckets. There's what we call like the resellers, right? And then we'll call like, just business to consumer, like me and you. Let's talk about the resellers for a second, because that's kind of like where the scale and transformation happens. On the reseller side, think about insurance companies, right? Think about healthcare providers, right? And I would say this: when you think about insurance companies, you think, oh, life insurance, auto insurance, right?
Home insurance.
Home
Probably,
insurance, right? So we go to them and say, hey, listen, um, we can add value to your portfolio, right? And like, okay, tell us. So, well, if you actually add the My Watchman app to your offerings, here's what happens. Not only do they get like all of these like benefits that you're already offering, now they have access to fire response, security response, and it's at the wherever they are. It's not like you have to be home, or it's wherever you are. Like if you're at the club and you're in a like security situation, you raise an SOS, a responder will come out there to you, right? If you're at the club and you have a medical situation, you raise an SOS, a medical response will come out to you. Very different use case, but very applicable for our context, right? Let's talk about the market woman, because I just want to give an example real quickly, and then you can ask the next question. Um, we have a organic ambassador in Liberia. Her name is Victoria Young. She used the app to save like a whole community,
a whole slum community.
a whole slum community, right? And as she was using the app, she was like, I don't even know if this is going to work, but I remember we work with the IRC, that's the partnership, and so she raised it. And she said, like 5 minutes later, the fire service was there, and she's a market woman, petty trader. She has gone on to like be an ambassador and advocate and tell her friends to get it, right? So that's a good example of the fact that we don't need anything free. We just need something relevant and useful, right? That you can see the value in.
Yeah. So just to add a little bit about the partnership. So we also partner with government entities.
Correct.
What we do for them is we use the app as an enabler to kind of bring coordination between the different entities. So, for example, in Liberia, if I was in a fire emergency, I'll have to call a different number. If I was in a security emergency, I have to call a different number. If I was in a medical emergency, I have to call a different number. And usually the information will provide them in the end. It's useful data. That's part of the partnership. The information is very useful data. In terms of we give coordinates to them. So if at the end of the day, say maybe we have 50 fire emergency, we can tell them that there's a concentration of fire within a particular area. There's a concentration of medical emergency within a particular area. The government now can use that information and go back and maybe policy and maybe say, okay, we need a fire engine within this area because there's a population of fire in that area too.
Digital literacy, big one.
Yeah.
Cost of data, big one. I'll stick to those two because they have all of these different like branches. So let's not mistake digital literacy for cell phone penetration. Very different things, right? Because you can actually have 100% cell phone penetration, mobile phone penetration, but people don't actually like use it as a way of life. Like they don't use it as an extension of their life.
Yeah.
So that's one context we see. And Liberia, Kenya, like they're a little further ahead. But again, remember, we're not only focused on middle class, we're focused on everyone, right?
BOP. Yep.
So that's why that matters for us. And I'll tell you kind of like how we're thinking about like that. So we work again like with like partners, government entities, like INGOs. We work with them to actually like integrate within things they're already offering, and then we'll also try to influence what they offer, right? On the digital literacy side, on the cost of data side. Look, this is a whole ecosystem, and everybody can win. All right. What I always like to say is, we don't have to get things for free. It just has to make sense.
Yeah.
Right. So we approach MTN, and these are all like the regional Liberia hub. We approach MTN and Orange Telecom and say, hey, listen, we have a proposition for you. Okay, we have this app, right? And we needed to run like in other advanced developed countries where if you dial 911, if you have data or you don't have data, it still goes through.
It still goes through.
We need that to happen. And the first reaction we got was, oh, we'll do that as a
CSR,
like
corporate social
corporate
responsibility.
social responsibility.
Yeah.
But like that's not sustainable. It's really not, right? Because then it's every year our user base grows. What if we go to 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, right? So we said, look, here's how we want to approach this. We want to approach this as a shared value partnership. Okay, let's talk about how you can zero rate these calls, and let's talk about like from a like a revenue share perspective, like what percentage of that goes to you, right? To at least help cover your costs. But that's the approach we have to take, right, Nazan? That's how it's stayed. But those are the two biggest ones.
Yeah.
I think digital literacy and like like access.
Yeah,
the,
actually,
the cost of data.
What would be your big audacious hairy goal if I could make a wish right now? What would that be?
We're working with a team right now. If I was to make a wish right now, is to make sure that everyone in Africa has access to My Watchman, because that creates a safe space. And we elaborate a lot more on that too, because again, we talk about the marketers, the petty traders. They get to stay in the market longer because now I have a sense of safety that I can sell a lot longer or a lot later within a day, because if I was in an emergency here, whether it's security, fire, or medical, I got help just a click away. So that creates a safe environment for everybody else. If I was hanging out tonight, went out to the club and everything else, and I'm thinking about going home, but I'm scared, I know I got My Watchman. That's a sense of safety. If my wife was pregnant in the middle of the night and I have no car, even though I have medical insurance, which is useless unless I get to the hospital, but I got no car, no means of getting to the hospital, but I got My Watchman. So my ambulance is going to come here, making sure that each and every one, most of the young folks have this app within their hands. That's a sense of safety. That's a sense of security. And again, it goes a long way because SDGs, we actually subscribe to about 5 of them.
Yeah, we're
And it's really, really important for us because we have a very young and vibrant population in Africa. So that digital literacy piece is to make sure that each and every one within Africa have My Watchman to create that sense of safety.
So let me add to that, but it would be like, so the way I want to think about this is like if I had one wish, I would say democratize the emergency response ecosystem, leveraging My Watchman. Why? Why that? Because we're the only ones who are doing it this way. Okay, and there's a lot of reasons for that because you see, democratizing it, breaks down barriers to access, right? Democratizing it makes it an everyday thing that everybody has. Here's what it does. So there's two sides to that. I'll talk about Victoria Yarn again, like the petty trader in Liberia. Yeah. She actually told us she stays in the market longer because of the app, right? Because she feels secure, right? But let's do this. Let's just like look into the future. Let's say like this thing is pervasive across Africa. People have it, right? If I was someone who was trying to do harm, and I know a lot of people have it, that at the touch of a button, like I don't know who will be able to respond to that person so it also serves as a deterrent. You see, we always talk about kind of like the protective side, but then if this thing is pervasive enough, then it becomes a deterrent, right? And I want to talk about the elephant in the room because a lot of times people think we're a non-profit. We're not, okay? We're just a socially conscious, for-profit organization focused on social impact. And so that's why we set it up this way. That's why we're doing it this way so that we can drive that cost down, right? So when you think about like our subscription, like for example, in Liberia, it's like $2 a month for all of those services or $20 a year. And the question like, why $2? Well,
do you make money?
Yeah, do you make money? And the thing is, today, no. But when you think about it, if the poverty, if like the UN states that for someone to be living in poverty, to live on $2 a day, right? $2 or less a day. In our minds, we're like, okay, as a business, we need to make sure that person can afford it, and then we'll work around that. Yeah. So that's how our business from a socially conscious perspective operates, right? So yeah.
Amazing, guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
This is amazing, and I just want to also acknowledge you guys for making the impact that you are.
Thank you.
Not just in Liberia, but hopefully going to all countries in Africa.
So we're going to Kenya next, Ghana,
Nigeria.
Yeah, Nigeria.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
Thank you
All right.
so much.
Thank you.